My child, the moment your eyes found these words, something shifted. Not in a small way, not in the way ordinary moments shift when one thing ends and another begins. Something shifted in the unseen place, in the space between heaven and your life, in the invisible territory where my purposes move before they ever become visible to human eyes. You were brought here, not by accident, not by a random sequence of events that happened to line up in a way that placed this before you. I guided you here with the same precision I use when I guide the stars to stay in their places, and the seasons to arrive in their time. What looks like an ordinary moment to everyone around you is not ordinary to me. I know exactly why you stopped here. I know exactly what is happening inside you right now, even before you have found the words to explain it to yourself. My child, you are one of the ones who was meant to see this. Many passed by. Many eyes moved over this and kept going, pulled back into the noise and speed of a world that never slows down long enough to let heaven speak. But you stopped. Something inside you recognized something before your mind could explain what it was recognizing. That pull you felt, that quiet sense that this moment carried something you needed. That was not your own instinct working. That was me. That was my voice reaching through the surface of your ordinary day to touch the part of you that has been quietly, privately, patiently waiting for exactly this kind of moment. The part of you that has not given up, even when giving up would have been the easier choice. The part of you that still looks up when something shifts, still holds a small piece of hope, even when hope has cost you more than most people around you know. I know that part of you very well. I have been watching over it carefully, and today I am speaking directly into it. Stay here, read every word, because what I am about to say to you was not written for a general audience. It was written for the specific condition of your heart in this specific season of your life. And if you leave too quickly, you will miss the part that was meant precisely for the question you have been carrying the longest. My child, I want to speak first about what you have been holding inside, not the things people see when they look at you, not the version of yourself you present to the world, the one that is capable and together and moving forward. I want to speak to what lives beneath that version, the part of you that exists in the quiet hours when the performance of the day is finished and you are alone with yourself and there is nothing left to maintain. That part of you has been carrying something heavy. I know how long you have been carrying it. I know the exact moment it started, the specific experience that first placed that weight on your spirit. And I know every day since then that you have gotten up and carried it again without letting anyone fully see how much it cost you. You have become remarkably skilled at appearing fine, at smiling when the question is asked, and giving the answer that keeps conversations from going somewhere too deep, too real, too close to what you actually feel. But I see, beneath all of that, I see the moments at night when your thoughts will not quiet, and the questions you have tried to set aside return with a clarity that makes it impossible to pretend they are not there. I see the way certain songs, or certain moments, or certain things other people say in passing reach something inside you that you were not expecting to be reached. I see the tears that came quietly, quickly, when you were alone. The ones you wiped away before they could become something larger because you were not sure you had the capacity to open that door all the way. Not one of those moments was hidden from me. Not one tear fell without my awareness. Not one night you spent fighting your own thoughts went unwitnessed by heaven. Not one morning you woke up and felt the weight before you even opened your eyes properly. Not one of those mornings passed without me being present in it. Closer to you than the breath entering your lungs, I was there. I was there in the silence when you asked if I could hear you. I was there in the waiting, when nothing seemed to move no matter how sincerely you prayed. I was there in the specific ache of watching other people receive what you had been asking for. And I know how complicated that feeling was. How you were genuinely glad for them, while something underneath that gladness quietly broke a little each time. And how you felt guilty for the breaking because you told yourself you should only feel joy. You were allowed to feel both. You are human, and I made you human, and what you felt was honest. I did not condemn you for the ache. I held you through it. My beloved, I need to tell you something that your heart has needed to hear for longer than you may realize. The silence was not absence. I know that is one of the most difficult things to truly believe after you have sat in silence long enough, that it begins to feel like the answer itself. When prayers go up and nothing visible comes back down. When you have prayed the same thing more times than you can count, and the situation has not changed. The mind begins to construct explanations, and the most painful explanation, the one that tends to settle in when the waiting stretches long enough, is that perhaps heaven is simply not responding to you specifically. Perhaps something about you places you outside the reach of what others receive. My child, I am telling you with complete authority that this explanation is false. You were never outside my reach. There is no version of you, no state of your faith, no accumulation of your failures or your doubts or your inconsistencies that has ever placed you beyond what I can do and what I intend to do in your life. The silence was not rejection dressed in the language of absence. The silence was a season. And seasons, by their very nature, change. I was working in the silence. Specifically, intentionally, powerfully working in the very places where you saw nothing happening. I was moving in the unseen territory that runs beneath what your eyes can confirm, shaping circumstances, repositioning things, closing doors that looked like opportunities but carried hidden costs you could not see from where you stood, and opening paths that did not yet exist but needed to be built before you could walk on them. You were not waiting for nothing. You were waiting for something that required time to become what it needed to be before it could reach you without breaking you. And I know that sounds like the kind of thing people say to make waiting feel more bearable, but I am not saying it to comfort you in a general way. I am saying it because it is specifically and precisely true for your situation. And when what has been prepared finally becomes fully visible in your life, you will understand exactly what I mean. Now, let me speak to the question of the others. You have watched people around you receive. You have seen prayers answered for people who did not seem to have been waiting as long, or who did not seem to be pressing toward the same things with the same sincerity. And you tried to make peace with that. You tried to understand it. You told yourself things that were supposed to help, that everyone has their own timing, that comparison is not useful, that you should only focus on your own path. And those things are true, but the truth of them did not always make the ache go away. My child, I want to explain something about this that goes deeper than the comfort of everyone has their own timing. When I move in someone else's life, I am not drawing from a supply that diminishes as I give. My capacity to bless is not a finite resource that runs low when I release it to others. When I answered a prayer for someone near you, I did not use up something that was meant for you. Their moment and your moment exist in entirely separate spaces within my purposes. What I gave them cost you nothing. But there is something else I want you to understand. The specific thing I am preparing to release into your life could not have been modeled on what someone else received. What was meant for them was shaped for their story, their capacity, their specific season of readiness, and what is meant for you has been shaped for yours. If I had given you a version of what someone else received, it would have been a diminished thing, a smaller thing than what your actual story requires. What I am bringing to you was designed for you, not adapted from someone else's blessing and handed to you as an afterthought. Which means the weight was not because yours was less. The weight was because yours was more specific, more particular to the exact shape of your life, more carefully constructed to meet you at the precise level of what you actually need, rather than a general approximation of blessing that happens to land near enough to be called an answer. My beloved, stay with me here because this next part is important. There were things in your life that I allowed to close, relationships that ended in ways that confused you, opportunities that disappeared without explanation, doors you knocked on sincerely, doors that seemed right, doors that felt like the answer to what you had been praying for, that simply did not open no matter how much you pressed toward them. And in some of those closures you were hurt. In some of them you were genuinely bewildered, because from where you stood, there was no obvious reason for the closing. And it felt arbitrary, and it felt unkind, and there were moments you wondered whether you had somehow made a mistake that you could not identify. You did not make a mistake. I closed those doors, not as punishment, not carelessly. I closed them because I could see what was behind them in a way you could not. And what was behind some of them was not what you imagined. What looked like an open path to you looked, from where I stood with full sight of what that path led to, like an entrance into a season that would have cost you more than the thing you gained would have been worth. I was protecting you, in real time, with real intention, and I know that protection felt like loss. I know it felt like closed doors, like silence, like being held back when you wanted to move forward. I know that what I called protection, you sometimes experienced as disappointment. That gap between what I was doing and what it felt like I was doing is one of the most painful parts of faith, and I do not dismiss that pain. I acknowledge it fully. What you felt was real, but what I was doing was also real. And now you are arriving at the place where those two realities are beginning to come together, where what I was doing in the silence is becoming something you can begin to see rather than only believe. My child, something is shifting. I want you to receive that sentence not as a vague encouragement, but as a specific declaration from the one who holds your story and knows every page of it, including the pages that have not yet been written. Something is shifting. The season that felt permanent, the waiting that felt like it had become simply the condition of your life rather than a temporary passage through. That season is turning, not because circumstances happen to improve on their own, not because the natural order of things eventually moved in a better direction, because I am moving, because the preparation is complete, because the things I was shaping in the unseen have reached the point where they can begin to become visible. You may have already felt traces of this shift without fully naming what you were feeling. A moment of unexpected peace in the middle of something that should have felt overwhelming. A thought that arrived clearly when clarity had been absent for a long time. A sense, quiet and difficult to explain, that something is different now, even though you cannot point to specific evidence that anything has changed. These are not accidents. These are the early edges of what is coming, the first light of something larger that is still moving toward you. Pay attention to those moments. Do not dismiss them as wishful thinking. They are real, and they are mine, and I am giving them to you as signs that what I told you is already in motion. Now I want to ask something of you. and I want you to receive this as the invitation it is rather than as a demand. I am asking you to open your hands, not in a general, symbolic way. Specifically, the things you have been holding tightly, the specific outcomes you decided were the only acceptable answers to your prayers, the particular shapes you drew in your heart for what the answer must look like when it finally comes, the timelines you built around how long this should reasonably take. I am asking you to loosen your grip on all of that, not because the desire behind them is wrong. The desire is real, and much of it came from me in the first place. But the specific form, the exact way you decided the answer must arrive, holding that too tightly, has sometimes been the thing that made it difficult to recognize what I was already doing in directions you were not watching. What I am bringing may not arrive in the shape you designed for it. It will be better. That is not a consolation. That is not the thing people say to manage expectations downward. I mean, it will carry more than the version you imagined, because it was designed by someone who knows what you need at a depth that goes beyond what you know about yourself. Let that be enough. Let me handle the shape of the answer and trust that I know how to build it in the way that actually meets you rather than the way that simply matches your expectation. My child, you have held on through something that asked a great deal of you. I want you to know that heaven noticed, not in a vague general way, specifically noticed. The specific days when your faith was thin and you kept going anyway. The specific moments when the rational thing would have been to close down and protect yourself, and you chose instead to remain open, even though remaining open left you vulnerable to more disappointment. The specific prayers you offered when you were not sure you believed they were reaching anywhere, but you offered them anyway, because something in you refused to completely stop. Those moments were seen. Every single one. And they mattered more than you know, because the version of you that kept going when keeping going was the harder choice, is the version of you that is now ready to receive what I am releasing. You could not have received this in an earlier season, not because I was withholding from you as discipline, but because what I am bringing requires someone who has been deepened by exactly the kind of process you have been through. You are that person now. The depth that the waiting worked into you is not wasted depth. It is the very quality that will allow you to hold what is coming without losing it. It is the capacity that will let you steward the next season well, rather than spending it quickly. The waiting shaped you for the receiving, and the receiving is now arriving. Stay open, stay willing, stay in the posture of someone who expects the movement of heaven, rather than the posture of someone who has learned not to expect anything in case it does not come. It is coming. Your name is known in heaven. Your story is held in my hands. The pages being written now are different from the pages that came before. What comes next is not a continuation of the difficulty. It is the turn, the shift, the arrival of what was prepared while you waited and pressed and held on and kept your face toward me, even when my face felt hidden from you. My face was never hidden. I was always looking at you. I am looking at you now, and what I see is someone who made it through. Someone who is still here. Someone who is even in this moment choosing to receive rather than to dismiss. Choosing to believe rather than to protect themselves from belief. Choosing to stay rather than to scroll past. That choice matters. It is the same choice that has marked your whole journey through this season. The quiet, persistent, costly choice to keep turning toward me, even when turning toward me felt like the harder direction. Keep making it, my beloved child, Do not leave this moment without receiving what it carries. Let the peace that is present here settle into the places that have been carrying tension for too long. Let the declaration that you are seen and known and held and not forgotten reach the specific places inside you that had begun to doubt those things. You are not behind. You are not overlooked. You are not in a category of people for whom things simply do not work out. You are a person whose specific story required a specific season of preparation, and that season has served its purpose. And what comes next carries the weight of everything I was building while you waited. Walk forward from this moment differently than you walked into it, not because your circumstances have already visibly changed, though they are changing, but because you have heard from the one who holds your story, and what I say about your story is the truest thing that can be said about it. The breakthrough is not distant. It is not theoretical. It is already moving, already in the unseen territory that runs just ahead of what your eyes can see. And it is approaching the visible surface of your life with a speed and a fullness that will surprise you when it arrives. Let it surprise you. Let it come in ways you did not fully predict, and let that be evidence not that it is wrong, but that it is bigger than what your waiting season imagination was able to construct. I specialize in exceeding the expectations of people who kept their faith alive through long and costly seasons. And you are one of those people. Hold on. Stay open. Receive what is coming. It was written with your name on it before the foundation of the world, and it is arriving now. If this message reached the part of you that needed it most today, type 1. Receive it. Lord in the comments. Let that be your declaration that you are open to what heaven is releasing into your life. And share this with someone who is still in the middle of their waiting. Someone whose faith needs to hear today that they were not forgotten. You may not know who that person is, but I do.